Before we start, please also see a second video for week 3 that emphasizes the usefulness of some of the week's readings and the importance of keeping certain issues in mind as you read. Now, for this week's overview. The 1950s are known for being the years of happy days, with bland families, bland politics, bland people, bland culture, Jell-O, Bobby socks, station wagons. They were, in reality, quite different. They were some of the most tense years of the Cold War. They were some of the bloodiest in American military history. Cultural, social, gender, and racial changes were not waiting until the 1960s. They were everywhere. The long 1950s actually began in the late 1940s with the presidency of Harry Truman. His administration was marked by post-World War II challenges that affected almost every aspect of American life. It also had to define the country's response to the threat of communism, the Soviet Union, and nuclear power. Always protected by oceans on two sides, the United States' post-war focus was on the clear Soviet threat in Europe. But in 1950, the distance from Asia no longer ensured that the continent could be of secondary importance. The North Korean attack on the American-supported South Korea led to 3 years of war which took the lives of approximately 40,000 Americans and hundreds of thousands of Koreans. The American people turned to a new man to deal with the country's problems and to end the war in Korea, a military hero of World War II, Dwight Eisenhower. His campaign for the presidency in 1952 faced early problems with allegations against his young running mate, Senator Richard Nixon, one of the first Cold Warriors, or communist hunters. Nixon's televised checker speech saved his place on the ticket and contributed to a change of party leadership in 8 years of Republican administration. Cold War concerns continued, highlighted in the 1950s by the shooting down of an American spy plane over the Soviet Union. The son of the captured pilot, Francis Gary Powers, became the founder of the Cold War Museum in Lorton, Virginia. But there was more to the 50s. Although almost everything seemed tied in one way or another to the foreign threats facing the country. Rock and roll, for example, was jungle music, used by the communists to undermine the United States from within. American society was being destroyed through its own children, who turned away from decent music and dance, although they never really did. However, the teen population was becoming its own demographic, as demonstrated by a young Southern singer who seemed to many adults to be the ultimate of vulgar sexuality and dangerous racial intermixing. Elvis Presley was not the first to raise concerns in music, in films, in comic books, as the country would see. Despite fears teenagers tended to follow traditions and expectations. Few were true rebels, but they also had new opportunities thanks to automobiles, expendable money, and peers. Many white teens might follow sedate dress styles, but others, beatniks, suggested that the future might bring more challenges. Television, in 90% of American homes by 1960, targeted a wide range of viewers, becoming to many not a source of high culture, but a vast wasteland of quiz shows, situation comedies, and violence. The 1960s began with an election which epitomized the new technology, and with a new president who seemed to epitomize a new era. But the new president, John Kennedy, quickly found himself dealing with carryover threats from the Cold War, the Cuban Revolution, and the American attempt to end it, the so-called Bay of Pigs invasion, and the presence of Soviet weapons only 90 miles from the U.S., the Cuban Missile Crisis. The tensions in Cuba and in Berlin over the wall constructed by the Soviets to prevent Eastern Europeans from fleeing to the West was not eased by the space race, with the Soviets in the early lead with 1957 Sputnik, and with the first man in space in 1961, Yuri Gagarin, but was by the 1963 Nuclear Test Ban Treaty that prohibited testing in the atmosphere, in space, and underwater. Now, 3 points to end with. First, much of what this course covers overlaps. Don't treat any week as if it's developments and events were not related to ones covered in other weeks. Second, because students are not writing responses in a timely manner to be of use to the class, weeks 3, 4, and 5 have a new rule. At least one response must be posted by 11:59 p.m. Thursday. The other must be posted by noon Sunday. I appreciate that these changes might be easy to forget, so please make notes to remind yourself. Third, you have many project options. Try ones to challenge you in terms of research, thinking, and composition, in terms of your use of the internet sources. The projects are designed to force you to think and plan carefully, to phrase carefully, to choose examples carefully, and edit carefully. If you do these things, particularly the initial planning, you can accomplish more in a 2-page paper than you have probably done in longer papers. Be precise, be concise, and plan. If you don't know where you're going, you will be roundabout, repetitive, general, and wordy. A key, of course, is a useful thesis statement and topic sentences.